after dawn. It's about 8:20 a.m. here in Lethbridge, Alberta. I'm in front of the courthouse. You can see there's a lot of police with some body armor, and they set their bikes up away from the walls. I'm not quite sure what that means. I asked them what's going on. There's so many police around the city. Every single corner has a police vehicle with red and blue lights flashing. I said, is there a drug kingpin on trial? El Chapo, maybe? And we had a chuckle because, of course, no, there's no drug kingpin or mass murder on trial. Just three ordinary men of the community who were at the peaceful protest at the border between Coutts, Alberta and Montana earlier this year. That was a completely peaceful protest that was very successful. It caused Jason Kenney, the premier at the time, to blink and to agree to abandon the bigoted vaccine mandates and other lockdown provisions. It was an echo convoy to the big one in Ottawa that achieved much the same nationally. Those protesters were peaceful, and they ended peacefully when Kenney announced that they had won. But that wasn't enough for Kenney and his prosecutors, and so we are here today in November for a hearing of three men from that convoy, peaceful men, who are being prosecuted by, I can only describe him as a man with a vendetta, Steven Johnston, a prosecutor who is demanding that these three peaceful men spend 10 years in prison. I say again, there was no violence, there were no weapons, there was none of that. 10 years in prison. And I Googled this guy, I mentioned this earlier. This same prosecutor, Steven Johnston, recently asked a judge for a 4.5-year sentence for a man convicted of a brutal rape. So a violent rape for this prosecutor deserves 4.5 years in prison, but a peaceful trucker protest deserves 10 years in prison. What's so atrocious here is that this does not reflect either the public interest. I don't know what the likelihood of conviction is, but I do know that this is one of the reasons Jason Kenney is no longer premier. And yet this legacy holdover, like the prosecutorial deep state, continues, even though the new premier, Danielle Smith, has apologized to those who were abused by the lockdowns and has said that she looks to review these out-of-control prosecutions. Here's the premier, Danielle Smith, saying that to our reporter, Celine Galas, just a couple weeks ago.
Hi, Ms. Smith. Celine Galas from Rebel News. During your campaign, you said that not only would you issue an apology to those prosecuted during COVID restrictions, but you would also grant them amnesty. When can we expect those apologies?
I can apologize right now. I'm deeply sorry for anyone who was inappropriately subjected to discrimination as a result of their vaccine status. I'm deeply sorry for any government employee that was fired from their job because of their vaccine status, and I welcome them back if they want to come back. As for the amnesty, I have to get some legal advice on that, and so I've already asked my staff to request that advice so I can see how we would be able to proceed on that. My view has been that these were political decisions that were made, and so I think that they need political decisions to offer a reversal. But I do want to get some legal advice on that first.
Would that also have to do with the timeline for the proposed amnesties?
I would have to see if I can do it. I will do it at the earliest opportunity. So I'm hoping within the next week I'll get that legal advice.
So I'm here, and the main trial will not be happening today, but rather I understand that there will be a hearing. This same Steven Johnston, the out-of-control prosecutor who wants 10 years in prison. I can't even believe I'm saying that. If we were in Russia or Iran or China, that would make sense. 10 years in prison for a peaceful protest. But in Alberta, motto strong and free, it's unnatural. Anyways, Steven Johnston, this prosecutor, he's no dummy. He's mean, but he's not stupid. And he knows that these men, if they have a trial in Lethbridge, Alberta, will certainly be acquitted. Lethbridge is one of the more freedom-loving places in a freedom-loving province, and there's massive support for these men. Hundreds of people are expected at the court today. You could already see them gathering around, even though it's quite cold. Even some of the police officers who I've been talking to without my camera on are clearly sympathetic to the protesters. So Steven Johnston knows that the likelihood of a conviction, let alone a 10-year sentence in Lethbridge, is low. So I understand that he wants to take the hearing out of Lethbridge and move it to another venue. I understand he's saying that there are security concerns. Thus, the bicycles. You know, he's a bit of a coward, as most bullies are. He's not moving this out of Lethbridge because of security concerns. He's moving it because he wants to move it to a jurisdiction that he's forum shopping, as we say in the law. He wants to go to a court that's more likely to convict. He would probably go to Toronto if he could, or Edmonton, or maybe put Rachel Notley on the panel. We're going to cover this because this is abusive. This is prosecutorial misconduct. I say that advisedly because there are two conditions to prosecute any crime in this country. The first is it in the public interest? There is no public interest for prosecuting these men. And second, is there a reasonable likelihood of conviction? Well, I would like to say, I would hope that in Canada, the answer to that is still no. That you can't put a man in prison for 10 years for peacefully protesting. But wouldn't that be quite something? We'll find out. And I'm going to be here throughout the day. We'll introduce you to the three men later, and we'll talk to their lawyer, Chad Williamson, who's on the file along with his colleague, Yoav Neve. What you just saw was an excerpt from my nightly show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every weekday, I do a monologue. Usually it's about half an hour. Then I interview an interesting guest, and then we read my hate mail or my fan mail, whichever is more fun. It's only available behind a paywall, though. That's how we pay our bills here at Rebel News. We don't take a dime from Justin Trudeau. But the good news is it's only $8 a month, about half the price of Netflix. And in addition to my nightly show, you also get weekly shows from 4 other friends here at Rebel News. So you're getting 36 shows a month just for $8. I think it's worth it. And even if you're not quite sure, do it anyways, because we rely on viewers like you to keep us free and independent. I promise you I'll never take a dime from Trudeau. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com and click subscribe. Thanks.